good evening, and welcome to the 2022 Heritage Festival of Saskatoon. We're thrilled that you can join us for our next event and the speaker series. And tonight's event really promises to be quite an interesting, enjoyable one. I've heard them speak before, and they are always so entertaining and so interesting. So I'd like to welcome you to hear Robin and Arlene Karpan. And before we begin, I'd just like to give a little bit of a bio of them. They are award-winning writers that are stationed or based in Saskatoon, but their work covers all of Saskatchewan, Canada, and many places all over the world. They have a special interest in and a love of natural environment and heritage, and you are going to see that passion and love come through their photos and their stories. They are authors of several best-selling books and have contributed to more than 100 publications. They have won many awards for their work, including 10 Saskatchewan Tourism Awards of Excellence. So please sit back, welcome, and I'll turn it over to Robin and Arlene.
Hi, glad to be here. We're really pleased to be part of the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon. And this evening, we're going to be looking at our natural heritage. So we can start the show here. Okay, so we're going to take you on a trip through Saskatchewan, a very quick trip, and we'll be looking at some of our natural landscapes. Some of the photos are from some of our books, such as the Great Saskatchewan Bucket List, 50 Unforgettable Natural Wonders to See Before You Kick the Bucket. And also, okay, we just got oh, there we go, it's working now. And then another of our books, Saskatchewan Best Scenic Drives. And this also takes you past a lot of scenic natural landscapes, but what we've done here is to put it together in driving trips that you can follow. So let's get started. What we're going to do is start down in the far south and then work our way up to the north. This is the Cypress Hills, a great area, especially with the combination of grasslands, forest, and highlands. And this valley in particular, in the west block of the Interprovincial Park, is spectacular. We're sitting in a valley very close to the Conglomerate Cliffs. And the Conglomerate Cliffs are great at any time of the day, but the highlight is if you can come here for sunrise. You can see the cliffs that we're standing on there. And if you do want to come here for sunrise in the middle of summer, prepare to get up well before 5 o'clock. And what happens is that the sun, in the middle of summer, it comes up in the low part of the plains between the hills, and all of a sudden it shines up at the Conglomerate Cliffs. And it bathes them in this spectacular warm color. Now, these set of Conglomerate Cliffs are very easy to visit. You just follow the signs and you can drive right up to them. There's another set of Conglomerate Cliffs called the Hidden Cliffs. And these are not that difficult to get to, but you can't drive right up to them. What happens is, the reason they're called hidden is if you drive along the Battle Creek Road in the west part of the park, you can't see the cliffs because they're hidden behind the trees. So to get there, you got to go on a fairly short hiking trail, which is part of the Trans-Canada Trail, and you get onto these spectacular cliffs overlooking the forested valley. And now we're going to head to the center block of the park, and here it's even easier to get to some of the great viewpoints. This one is called Mile Butte. It's one of the highest points in this part of the park. And you get up on top and you really get a feel for what the lay of the land is, where you're standing up high and looking over the plains far below. Our favorite drive in the park is the Gap Road. And it's called the Gap Road because it goes between the two blocks, the center and the west block of the Interprovincial Park. And this isn't part of the park. It cuts through pasture land, but it's equally fascinating. And some of the bystanders watching you go by. And if it's a reasonably wet year, you get a lot of wildflowers. And just great drive everywhere you go in the Cypress Hills. There's some of the more difficult ones here, like the north and south Benson Road, which you got to have a fairly high clearance vehicle to go up here, but most of the main roads you can drive with pretty well any kind of vehicle. Now, lots of great places to see wildflowers in Saskatchewan, but if we had to pick our favorite, it would be Cypress Hills. One reason it's a mix of habitat, because we've got flowers from the prairies, from the woodlands, and also from the highlands. And one of the best places we know of in Saskatchewan to see lupins. And a lot of specialties. The mountain shooting star is very common here. And this is by far the best place anywhere in the prairies to see wild orchids, like this, the Calypso Orchid. In fact, I think they say there's more species here than pretty well any other part of the prairies. And great place for fall colors. And one of the benefits of coming here for fall colors is it often takes place a little later. So sometimes after the leaves are already gone in the northern forest, it's still going full steam here. This photo, for example, was taken one Thanksgiving weekend one year. Not all of the great scenery is in the park. There's other areas such as this Brady Cooley Road that runs north of the town of East End. And probably our favorite road is the road that runs between East End and Ravenscraig. It follows the Battle Creek Valley, where we're following the Battle River Valley, and we're looking over a lot of the kind of, they're almost badland type formations on one shore of the river. The highest point of land here is called Jones Peak, and we can see there's it's marked by a communications tower on top. And one of the benefits of that is because this tower is here, you can drive right up to it on top and get these marvelous views over the valley. Great to come here anytime, but if you can manage it when the light is low, just before sunset, it's quite a magical spot.
Now we're going to have a look at some of the badland formations we have in Saskatchewan, and boy, do we have lots. One of the best places to see badlands is in Grasslands National Park, and we're going to have a look at the West Block first of all. This is 70 Mile Butte, and it's a butte that you can climb and go hiking, and by golly, it makes a wonderful spot for sunset in the summertime because it faces west. And the sun is just absolutely gorgeous when it shines on the butte. You can take a driving route through the Eco Tour driving route, it's called, through the west block of the park, and see some of the many other formations and the rugged terrain that's found in the park. And just a beautiful drive. You are probably going to see a really good chance of seeing wildlife along your drives and your visit to the park. And especially in the West Block, there's a good chance of seeing bison. There is a bison herd that lives in the park that's doing very well. There are coyotes, and you're almost guaranteed of seeing these little fellows. They're called Blacktail prairie dogs, and it's the only place in Canada where they occur in their natural environment. And you might say, well, those look like gophers for those of us who are from the prairies. But no, actually, the black-tailed prairie dogs are quite a bit larger. They're very social animals, and they love to nuzzle and chirp. You can drive right by some of their colonies. They're huge colonies right by the road as you're driving on the Eco Tour driving route. So you're almost guaranteed of seeing them. And of course, they do make a nice, tasty snack if you happen to catch one. The park is also home to the endangered species called the burrowing owl. The burrowing owl makes its home in some of the abandoned dens or mounds that the prairie dogs have built. And this little fella is becoming even more rare as things change in our environment. But you might spot them, and you're there. You might see moose. Almost certain that you will see pronghorn as they bound through They're North America's fastest land animal. There are lots and lots of mule deer. And if you come in the fall, you might even see some of the bucks looking very, very majestic. Now we're going to jump to the east block of Grasslands National Park and to the Rock Creek Badlands. And this place is very, very easy to visit. From the Rock Creek campground, there's a little driving route that takes you right to a viewpoint where you look over this immense valley that was formed eons ago by erosion and meltwater. A magical place where you can see these buttes and all sorts of badlands formations. You're welcome to go down into the valley and explore and see what you can find. And even on a foggy day, there's lots of hiking opportunities that you can do in the park and looking down from the rim of the valley. Normally, the park is fairly dry, and we can see some of the cracks and everything in the soil. But every once in a while, during a really wet year, this is what the park looks like. And you'd hardly believe that it's the same area. Everything just comes alive and it bursts forth with such energy and life. And the wildflowers displays can be extraordinary. And some people that we talked to said that they don't ever remember seeing it like this. So if there is a wet year, let's hope for some wildflowers. And another badland area of Saskatchewan is the Big Muddy Valley. And this is not too far from the town of Bengoth and the U.S. border. It's kind of in between there. And this is another large area where sediment was deposited years and years ago and then carved by glacial meltwater. Castle Butte is kind of regarded as the highlight of the area. It's this massive butte, a quarter mile around. And it was a landmark and has been a landmark for hundreds of years by lots of different Aboriginal groups and settlers and today's voyageurs as well. This is Castle Butte at sunset. So coming here for sunrise or sunset is really the highlight. So sunset in midsummer, and this is sunrise. And this is the photo that we chose to put on our Great Saskatchewan bucket list book. And the sun just comes up and it strikes the butte and it turns kind of an ordinary, sort of a muddy looking butte into a thing of beauty, that's for sure. And you can see the butte even backlit if you climb some of the roads that are nearby. And when you get higher up, you can see how the different layers have been deposited over eons of time and eroded. And we've mapped out a nice little backroads route that takes you from Willow Bunch through Harp Tree, and it comes in sort of on the back side of Castle Butte, and then you come down the hill and into the valley. So you might want to check that one out.
This is probably the least known badlands in Saskatchewan. These are the Avidly Badlands, very close to the town of Avidly. And unlike the others, which are in parks or other protected areas, this one is just in someone's pasture. So what's happened here is that in order to allow people to go in there, there are tours run by the Heritage Museum in the town of Avidly. And it's an incredible place because you walk across a fairly level, ordinary looking pasture, and all of a sudden the land just drops away into this spectacular country of buttes and all kinds of muddy formations on the walls and these pillars, and just incredible. Now we're going to head to the southeast corner of Saskatchewan along the Cypress River. And here too, we've mapped out a driving route along some of the back roads here. And one of the highlights here is Roche Percé, which is not too far east of Estevan. And there's this great sandstone formation that you see it right from the road. But what's even better is once you get up here and there's a little kind of a park area and you wander through the bush and there's all kinds of other weird sandstone formations. Some of them still have arches and natural bridges, and but because it's such soft sandstone, it's constantly being eroded. Now we're going to take a route around Lake Diefenbaker. There's a lot of different approaches to the lake. One of our favorites is, this is on the north shore of the lake, going towards Prairie Lake Regional Park, which is south of Beachy. The road winds through the hills lining the valley, and as you get closer to the lake, the vista opens up. And if you happen to hit it just right, when the sun goes down, it just shines up and turns these cliffs this brilliant red color. And this is the harbor, the boat harbor at Elbow Harbor, just outside of town at Elbow. And probably one of the most accessible parts of Lake Diefenbaker is Saskatchewan Landing Provincial Park. Here we have the Goodwin House, which is a historic building that now serves as the Park Visitor Center. And anytime that we stay here, we always come to this spot for sunset. It's simply called the Lookout Point. And you get up on the rim, on the north shore, and you're looking over to the south. And as the sun goes down, the shadows give some definition to these hills and valleys. And it can be quite rewarding right at sunset if you've got nice light conditions. Sunrise isn't too shabby either. This is a road that's right beside goes by the campground. Now we're going to head to the south side of the lake. And if you drive along the road there, you cross Swift Current Creek. And of course, Swift Current Creek starts a lot farther south, runs through the city of Swift Current, and then it empties into Lake Diefenbaker. And this is just maybe a half a mile upstream where the road crosses. Probably the most spectacular approach to the lake on the south shore is at Herbert Ferry Regional Park. All of a sudden, the road starts going down and it winds around these spectacular hills before going down to the water. Lake Diefenbaker is a great place for critters. Pronghorn are fairly common here, and wildflowers, and especially cactus. You've got the lower pincushion cactus that turns this incredible crimson reddish color in early summer, and then the larger prickly pear cactus. And fall colors. When we think of fall colors, we usually think about the northern forest, but the prairies can be just as amazing. This is Saskatchewan Landing. And if you come at the right time, there's all of these different shrubs, and it can be just a wild palette of different colors. Now, sand dunes. Did you know that Saskatchewan is the sand dune capital of Canada? There's no other part of the country that even comes close. We've got the largest sand dunes in the country, the second largest ones, and a few others thrown in for good measure, such as these at Douglas Provincial Park. Just a short hike of maybe 34 minutes from the Lake Diefenbaker shore, and you get into this wild country of sand dunes. And you can wander over these, and it's just like you've wandered into an entirely different kind of terrain. And lots of neat stuff like these circles in the sand, where you get these small blades of grass, but the wind whips them around, making, in a lot of places, perfect circles. Now, another sand dune area, and the Great Sandhills, and these are the second largest dunes in Canada. And the easiest way to come here is to head to the town of Sceptre, which is about 20 kilometers east of Leader. On your way, you should stop at the wonderful Great Sandhills Museum in town to kind of get your bearings and see what else is of interest there. And from Sceptre, there's signs that direct you here. And it's an amazing approach. You drive along a road there, all of a sudden there's massive dunes right beside the road. Great place to go wandering around. And the farther you go, you're probably not even going to see footprints from other visitors. And it's great to visit anywhere at early morning or evening when you get that low light, but especially in Sandhills, because here sometimes they'll turn a golden color or even a reddish color, depending on what the light is like. So a great place to go wandering around. You can find a lot of different dune formations. And if you're not tired of sand dunes, you can go to another spot. This is Good Spirit Lake, Good Spirit Lake Provincial Park. And there's a lot of these shoreline dunes lining the lake. And this photo is from last fall. And as you know, last year we had quite low water levels a lot of places. And this is a very shallow lake. So when the water goes down, there's all of these wonderful contours in the sandbars and on the beach.
Now, Saskatchewan is known as North America's duck factory. And that's because 1 in 4 ducks is raised in Saskatchewan from the entire continent. And we are so lucky to have beautiful waterfowl, shorebirds, and everything in between. Over 400 species of birds frequent Saskatchewan. So we're just going to skip over a few of them very, very, very quickly. This is a pair of redhead ducks and the small bufflehead duck. It's one of the smallest ones, but if the light catches it just right, that iridescent feathers just absolutely are stunning. And this is some of the antics they go through during mating season. Here's 2 males chasing each other, competing for a female. And we have canvasbacks in action. And the ruddy duck. This is, I think, our favorite duck. A male. He's got this beautiful, outrageously blue bill, and his tail is pointed up in the air. And see how thick his neck is. What he does is he inhales, and then he exhales around him and blows bubbles in the water. And then he ends up with a great big belch. Now, just tell me, what female wouldn't be impressed by that? And a redneck grebe. And here is an eared grebe. And it won't be that long, maybe 6 weeks or so, before we see the sharp-tailed grouse starting maybe to do their mating dances. And they dance around. These are the males trying to impress the females, a tail in the air and that purple sac in their air sac and their lovely eyebrows. And they dance around and stomp their feet and, again, looking for a mate. Now, this fellow has a different approach. This is the little drummer boy of the forest, ruffed grouse. And he finds a log and he starts beating his wings so fast, making a big drumming sound that you can hear right through the forest to expand his territory and set out his territory and tell the female where to find him. We have birds of all sizes in Saskatchewan, big ones like the red-tailed hawk, and little tiny ones like the ruby-throated hummingbird, and this one's a male. We have lovebirds, the American avocets. After they mate, they put one wing over the other one and they cross bills and do a little pirouette dance. We have songbirds of all descriptions. One of the best known is the meadowlark, yellow warblers. We have pelicans in Saskatchewan. Half of the country's pelicans are reared and occur in Saskatchewan. Of course, in Saskatoon, we see them down by the weir, but they're distributed all throughout the province. Shorebirds, we have plenty. We have kind of solitary ones like the black-necked stilt. We have ones that travel in huge numbers, and these are sanderlings. One of the best places to see them is in Chaplin Lake and Reed Lake down in the south. About half of the world's sanderlings come through Saskatchewan on their way to their nesting grounds in the Arctic. And it isn't only summer where we excel. We also have fall migration, which is just nature's great spectacle in its own right, where hundreds and thousands of waterfowl come and stage here on their way to their nesting or their southern wintering grounds, because we're on the Central American Flyway, and it's kind of the route that they take. So here we have sandhill cranes and several different species of geese and ducks that occur here, as well as lovely tundra swans that stage here before they go south. And if you're lucky, you might see whooping cranes. We do have whooping cranes that pass through the province. They tend to stay for a little bit of time, feeding and resting and gathering up enough energy before they make the trip south.
Okay, now we're going to head to the Cypress Hills, or sorry, to the Coppell Valley. And okay, Arlene, you can continue with this.
All right. Okay. So the Coppell Valley stretches for about a third of the way across Saskatchewan. And we have mapped out some driving routes that take you through almost the entire route, right from the beginnings of the valley to the Manitoba border, or almost anyway to that border. Along the way, you're going to find things like some of the largest lakes that are just east of Fort Coppell and around Mission Lake and Kettle Lake and other places. You're probably going to make some friends along the way, find some curious bystanders who love to take part in your travels. The Fort Ellis Trail is the beginning of the gravel route, and that will take you through to nearly the Manitoba border. It's a route that heed the sign, dry weather road, because that's very important to note. Along the way, you will go over some of these older concrete bridges. You'll follow along the valley floor, and along the river, in many places, you'll cross the river. You'll see some some tiny villages. I think this is the one that we like the most. It's the most picturesque. It's the tiny hamlet of Ellisboro, nestled right there in the valley. A lot of the valley is used for farming and for ranching, and it's growing crops and hay as well. And as you keep traveling farther east, you'll see that the valley walls will become more forested, heavily forested. So it's a beautiful trip no matter when you take it, but if you do come in late August or beginning of September or so, you're liable to see some of the wildflower displays, especially if it's a wet year. And you can enjoy some of the fall colors anywhere along the valley that you find some gorgeous colors. And this is the St. Nicholas Kennel Church, one of the most photographed churches in Saskatchewan. It's near Craven, and we tell you exactly how to get there. It's very easy to find, but it looks beautiful, framed by the trees in the fall.
Now we're going to head slightly farther north into the Thickwood Hills. And this is kind of our neck of the woods. And the Thickwood Hills are if you think of northeast of the Battlefords, northwest of Blaine Lake, south of Spiritwood in that area. And it's a beautiful area because it's a mix. There's quite a bit of farmland and pasture, but also a lot of aspen parkland and a lot of wetlands. And this is the highway that runs between the Battlefords and Spiritwood. And what's neat to go here is to not only take the main highways, but to just head off on some of the back roads. You can almost pick a back road at random here and not be disappointed. There's hidden away places like Setgrass Lake, which is a migratory bird sanctuary. And this whole area tends to be quite good for wildflowers, and for some reason, especially paintbrush. In the last few years, we've had some incredible displays. and quite often wildflowers right along the roads. And because of all the aspen forest, it's also a great area for fall colors. Now, probably the best known spot in Thickwood Hills is the Crooked Bush. And the Crooked Bush, just south of Eltacane, north of Spears. And it's just this otherworldly spot. There's a small bush of aspen trees where every tree, every branch, every twig is twisted and contorted. And what's weird about it is the bushes right next to it are perfectly normal. So what's going on? There's been a lot of speculation over the years. Somebody suggested they probably buried a lawyer here at one time, but I'm sure that's just speculation. The official explanation is that there's a fellow here many years ago who swears he saw a flying saucer land here. The passengers got out, they all peed on the ground, got back in, flew off. Trees were never the same after that. Now, this area was also known for its home brew, but that's probably just a coincidence. Now, scientists have a more mundane explanation involving genetic mutations and such things. But you have to ask what caused the mutation in the first place. And I like to think that it was spaceman Pete. Now we're going to head east. Duck Mountain Highlands, Duck Mountain Provincial Park and surrounding area, heavily forested. This is one of our favorite drives. It goes towards the ski hill in the southern part of the park. Great in the summer, but spectacular in the fall. And if we continue along the east side of the province, the Woody Lake Road, heading a little farther north of there, is another heavily forested, quite a spectacular area. And who doesn't like snakes? This is at Fort Livingston. Fort Livingston is just north of the town of Pelly. And this site is actually Fort Livingston. It's a National Historic Site. Fort Livingston was the first mounted police headquarters. When the mounted police did their historic march west, this was the first place where they had their headquarters. And this was also the first capital of the Northwest Territories. But the people are long gone. All there is a few historic markers, but the snakes are there, still there in huge numbers. Every spring they come out and get into these mating balls. What it is a big orgy. There's like thousands of snakes all getting together, and they're not shy about it. And this phenomenon takes place for a couple of weeks in the spring. Generally around Mother's Day is considered about the prime time to go. So if you're looking for somewhere to take mom on her special day, I can guarantee you this would be a Mother's Day that she'll never forget. Continuing farther north, this is Prince Albert National Park. And it seems like we're in the north, but if you look at a map, we're really just in the center of Saskatchewan. The park's almost smack in the middle of the province. And it's a transition area between the northern boreal forest and the aspen forest to the south, plus a lot of other neat stuff in between. This is Prospect Point, Waskesiu. Anytime that we stay in the Waskesiu area, this is where we'll come for sunset. Great place for wildflowers, wonderful walks to a lot of different types of terrain, great drives. This is the drive to Kingsmere Lake. And one of the highlights, if you want to take a hike or a canoe trip to Grails Cabin. And this is where Gray Owl lived, worked, wrote his best-selling books, and was finally buried. And of course, a wonderful place for fall colors. If we have to pick an area of the province that will usually go for fall colors, it'll usually be a combination of Prince Albert National Park and Narrow Hills Provincial Park, which is not too far away. They just, usually they're quite reliable for putting on quite a show. This is Baldy Lake in the Narrow Hills, and this is Grace Lakes at the end of the Narrow Hills Scenic Drive. And this is a top-down view of a wetland, and in the hills, and with the the vegetation turning color in the fall. Now, about halfway, or not quite halfway, a little over halfway between PA Park and Laurens, there's a turn off onto Highway 165, and if you go along there, you can come to the Napikimu Sand Cliffs. And the Napikimu River, the last part of it, or the last part of it before it gets to the road, there's a number of places where there's these sandstone cliffs. They're almost pure white, and just they really stand out from the forest. And if you take the road, there'll be a sign where you can turn off and you can take a hiking trail, and then you look across the river to these cliffs.
All right, now we're going to enter water wonderland of northern Saskatchewan. And it's a canoeing paradise, a kayaking paradise, and just made for exploration. There's so much you can do with interconnected lakes and river systems and infinite ways to put everything together. This was a very memorable trip on Marshawn Lakes, one of those surreal days on a huge lake when there wasn't a breath of wind, and you just felt like we were right between the sky and the water, which of course we were, but it just seemed like we were floating there. Lots of beautiful places to stop for lunch along the way and spend the night in Canadian Shield country. The Churchill is one of the most popular routes for exploration by canoe and kayak and boat in the province. And here we're just right outside or very near Robertson Falls. And here's the approach to Robertson Falls, where we see some of those wave trains just building up steam, especially in a high water year like it was a couple of years ago. And here's what it looks like when Robertson Falls drains Lake Otter Lake and goes into another lake below and continues on its way. It can be quite a frothing maelstrom, to say the least. But there are quiet, nice places to get sunsets and lots of different views you can take. A third way that Otter Lake gets drained to the lake below is through North Falls and North Rapids. And this is on the far east side of Otter Lake. A beautiful area that only canoes and kayaks can get into. No motorboats allowed here. And an idyllic spot to spend a few days. We had planned to spend one night here, and we ended up spending 3. It was just so quiet and peaceful. Good fishing, couldn't ask for anything more. Now, when it comes to waterfalls, we have plenty of waterfalls in Saskatchewan. There's fairly well-known ones like Nastoyak Falls, and it's not very far from Stanley Mission. You can canoe here, or you can boat here if you don't have your own transport and are unable to canoe or kayak. This Nastoyak Falls is where the water from Lac La Ronge comes tumbling down through the rapid river and finally meets up with the waters of the Churchill River eventually. It's a spectacular area, especially in years of high water. Some years we have actually stood on some of those rocks in the front there, or very close to those rocks, but certainly not in a high water year. And when it's boiling like that, there's steam and mist and all sorts of rapids that are coming even at the end of the wave train. There's another set of falls at Kettle Falls, and this is closer to where the Reindeer River comes into the Churchill. And it's a significant set of falls. We found pelicans feeding here, and a beautiful spot. It's called Kettle Falls because the water was boiling up as if it looked like it was coming from a kettle. There was so much water and mist. And farther along is the Waffleman Gorge. And in our bucket list book, where we've rated things as some of the attractions as ease of visiting, we labeled this one a number 5, which was the most difficult to get to because of the approach to it. But if you do ever happen to get here, it is something that you'll never forget. There are many river systems and waterfalls. A beautiful waterfall or a river system that we followed a few years ago is the Waffleman, starting at Brabant Lake, just full of waterfalls, about 12 of them or more. All of them with portages and varying flows of water. Then there's the Fond du Lac River with Manitou Falls, which is the main feature. And you can see here that we've been transported now into a different type of terrain. We're now into sandstone in the Athabasca Basin, which is not the typical Canadian shield country of the north. It's sandstone, more easily eroded, and you can see how the river has carved out some of the sandstone here ages ago as it made its way through. The Clearwater River is a Canadian heritage river, and one of the main features along the Clearwater is Smooth Rock Falls. And this is such a huge waterfall that you can't even see it all at once. So there's one of the pieces of Smooth Rock Falls, and the falls make this big C turn. And as it makes the C turn, it just froths over into the falls below on a different side altogether. Just a beautiful area. And in a high water year, this is the overflow channel where some of the water from the falls will come into this beautiful little area where you get these wispy little waterfalls with outrageously red rocks set against the backdrop of the beautiful green trees. It's a beautiful spot. And of course, everybody likes a campsite with a view. And this is Skull Canyon, another one of the major features along the Clearwater, and a view exactly from our campsite where the river comes. It's sandwiched between these two huge granite rocks and pillars, and it comes tumbling into the lake below to continue its course. And here's why it's called Skull Canyon, because you can see the skull features when the light is low and the backlighting lights up the eyes of the skull. And now we're going to go even farther north, and this is the realm of the float plane, because some of the access to many of the lakes and the rivers and starting points for trips, you have to get in by float plane. So here's one trip we did a few years ago along the Porcupine River. It's a remote river in northeastern Saskatchewan. It's not very well known. And the Dene who used to live here called it the Dead Man's River. They tended to avoid the river in many ways, and when they could, and didn't travel along it. But one of the highlights is this enormous cliff, and you see that black opening there. This is called the Eye Cave. And it's called the Eye Cave. It's big enough that you can get a couple of canoes in there. It's just this opening in this huge cliff. And when you get inside and you look up, it's like this giant eye is peering down right on top of you.
This is Lake Athabasca, one of our favorite places. We're often asked questions like, what's your favorite river, or what's your favorite park? And it's often difficult to answer because we might have a different favorite river for different reasons. But when it comes to our favorite lake, there's no question. It's Lake Athabasca. It's Saskatchewan's largest lake. It's the fourth largest lake entirely within the borders of Canada. And it's just a gorgeous lake. This is the South Shore. The South Shore, a lot of beaches, very low lying, shallow water. And of course, it's home to the Athabasca sand dunes. And these are the largest sand dunes in Canada, the largest major sand dunes this far north anywhere in the world. stretches about 100 kilometers along the shore, and just all kinds of marvelous features here. We've canoed here a few times. The last trip we did was along the shore of Lake Athabasca. It's a huge lake, and I can assure you that this calm water is not at all typical. We were lucky on this trip to have quite a bit of calm conditions, but a number of years ago when we canoed along here, we got storm stayed in one spot for over 5 days. We just couldn't move because of the big waves. Wonderful places to camp along the way. If it's quiet, we can camp right along the beach. And there's these big dune areas and these remnants of these old forests that are sticking out of the sand. And here's a couple of spruce trees which are just hanging on to life. They're more and more of their roots get exposed as the sand blows away the supporting structure. And these remnant of forests are sometimes referred to as exhumed forest. What happened was many years ago, as the sand dunes migrated with the prevailing winds, it covered up the trees, and then as the dune kept migrating, it uncovered or exhumed them again. So these trees are just desiccated. It almost looks like petrified wood. And these ghostly sentinels standing over the shore of the lake, and especially scenic right around sunset. And a lot of them have been eroded into these wild shapes. This is one of the reasons why the Athabasca sand dunes are so unique. If we think of the major sand dunes around the world, they're usually in deserts or at least very arid places. These dunes are smack in the middle of boreal forest next to a huge lake, and they're sliced by 3 rivers. And this is the William River. And the William River, we've canoed here a few times. Once we did a trip right down the river, and then a few other times we paddle upstream partway. And this is the delta. At the delta, it spreads out, gets just inundated with sand. And what you're looking at here is mostly the river floor. Whatever is bright white might be above water sand dunes, but everything else is below the surface of the water, and the different colors indicating different depths of the sand. And when we've canoed here, it's quite a job because often it's too shallow. So you have to stay in the darker parts, which are deeper. So it's constantly zigzagging back and forth across the river. And there are some times when the water is simply too low to canoe. So it's not always possible to do it every year. But if you do get here, it's just a place like no other. Just the colors are just wild. And then once you're on the William River, if we take a hike about 2 hours west, you head off, it looks like you're just going into an endless desert of sand. And then you finally come to the giant dunes. There's about 40 of these monsters, some of them 30 meters high, a kilometer long, and have this knife edge crest. The best is if you can come here at sunset. And then what happens at sunset, one side of the dune falls into shadow, and the other, just as the sun goes down, turns this brilliant gold. And here, more than anywhere, we kind of have to give our heads a shake and say, where are we? We haven't taken the wrong turn and ended up in the Sahara or something by mistake. We're still in Saskatchewan. The North Shore of Lake Athabasca, like a different world. The south is sandy, low-lying, shallow. The North Shore, classic Canadian shield country, deep bays, rocky outcroppings, tall cliffs. This is Beaver Lodge Mountain. It's the highest point on the North Shore, just kind of south of Uranium City. And there's a local Dene legend that there was this was home to a giant beaver. And there are some bays here. This is McIntosh Bay. It's so big that it's almost like it's a separate lake, protected from the open water of the big lake, and just a gorgeous place. We've camped here a couple of times. And this is the Bouvier River Falls that flows into Lake Athabasca. And probably the most colorful spot is Reed Bay. There's this line of cliffs, and the water is very deep here, and it faces west. And in low light, just before sunset, it gets even more colorful. And the color comes from the different seams of rock, as well as different types of lichen on the surface as well. And another very atypical quiet day on Lake Athabasca. This is a place that we've called it the Pinnacle Rock. I don't know if it has an official name. It's a place that not too many people get to. It's in the same bay as Beaver Lodge Mountain, and it's at the opposite end of the bay. And what's happened here is a cliff face collapsed. It was eons ago, because it's all the rock and rubble is covered, with thick layers of lichen. And it left this pinnacle chimney-shaped rock, and it's quite a spectacular sight.
Okay, we've shown you some waterfalls in Saskatchewan, but now we're going to go and show you the big daddy of them all. This is Hunt Falls on the north shore of Lake Athabasca. It's not too far from Stony Rapids, and it's on the Grise River. It's actually not that difficult to get to. What float planes can do is land on a fairly large lake, a long, narrow lake that's on top of the falls, and then just stay and wait for you, and you can scramble down and see the different types of falls that there are here. The falls are enormous. There's only one way to get to the other side, and that's if you have a canoe or a boat. The falls extend 60 meters wide, and they're 15 meters tall in a single drop. So right here. And that's why it's considered Saskatchewan's largest waterfall in a single drop. And from the air with the drone, you can definitely make out all sorts of features that would not be possible to see any other way, as it flows over this big fault line. A magical place if you do happen to get there, and we highly recommend it. There's just something about sitting right near the edge of the precipice here and looking down at this powerful, majestic body of water, and thundering down. You can't, it makes so much noise you can't even talk to one another here, but it is a very special place in the north, and we hope that it will be there for a long time to come. So with that, we wrap up our presentation. We'd just like to let you know that we have a blog that if you're interested in following us at photojourneys.ca, and there's our Twitter handle and our Instagram handle. And we would, if you're interested in buying any of our books, we can look after you through Parkland Publishing. And our books are available at several bookstores and gift shops and certain museums throughout the province. So with that, I'll turn it back to Ian and Irene.
Oh, thank you very much, Robin and Arlene. That was so fascinating. I've been to several of the places you featured, and I can tell you my photos don't look anything like your photos. So they are so gorgeous, and the lighting and everything, which kind of leads us to one of the questions is, can you tell us about the camera you use?
It depends. With all of these photos, we've probably, it's probably a half a dozen different cameras over the years. And DSLRs, nothing unusual. But what's we usually look for is not so much what camera you're using, but the light. And obviously, for some of the bird shots, we need a longer lenses, like 500-600 millimeter lenses. Some of those shots, our latest camera, Nikon D850, but they're, some of the photos are from earlier Nikon cameras as well.
Right, great. And many comments from Deborah Sprout, from Rayanne, amazing colors in the waters, and from Keela. And sorry if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name. I apologize in advance. It looks so beautiful. It's in my bucket list. This was posted when you're doing the Athabasca sand dunes, and that is definitely, even before this presentation, this is one of my bucket list trips, and this certainly, yeah, that's cinched it. The next.
One of the other things I might mention related to the question about cameras is that on our Photo Journeys blog, what we do is a combination of kind of travel log places, how to get to different places, but a lot of our postings are also about photography and different tips about how to do different types of photography, whether it's wildlife or getting photos at in low light or at night and whatnot. So if people are interested in photography, you might want to have a look.
Well, that's a good tip, because that's often many of us are amateur photographers, but to get those tips. So that's great. Thank you, Robin. The next comment: beautiful photos. What a treat to see these. Thank you so much for sharing. Diane, a wonderful tour of so many beautiful places, this amazing province. And I think that's what I really appreciate about your presentation is, after a couple of years of being basically housebound and looking at my four walls, this summer I really do want to get out and to explore. And I know a lot of people in Saskatoon and Saskatchewan do. But we're probably going to stay pretty close to home. So this is great. And your books are great because it'll give us so many suggestions to do in Saskatchewan. So yeah, I think the appetite is there to get out this summer. For Marianne, how long have you waited to capture some of these wildlife photos? Do you come across them or wait to capture them? Because that was going to be one of my questions too. Marianne and I are on the same page. I was thinking, so did that photo take 5 days of you sitting there waiting for that photo to happen?
It's a little bit of everything. Sometimes there's the ones where you sit and wait and nothing happens. And then the next time things could just come together. But I'd say overall, it's a little bit of everything. Sometimes there'll be things like the flying hawk, where if you come across the hawk and you've got the right lens and everything, or maybe you can get the shot at fairly quick measure. The photo, for example, of the hummingbird that we've got, because they're so small, that takes a lot more time. Kind of watching where they're landing, getting set up with a camera, and you can take a gazillion shots and maybe one will work. So it's a little bit of everything.
Including,
sorry,
I was going to say, especially that photo of the two birds with their wings over each other. Was that did you have to wait hours for that one, or was that a happy accident?
But what happens there is that because it's mating season, that might happen. And it's often a matter of chance whether you'll see that behavior. We saw it once. Oh no, we've seen it a couple of times, but only once when I had the camera, because it happens so quick. That whole procedure happens in maybe a second and a half. It's very quick. And unless you're already got your camera pointed, you're going to miss it. So it helps if you're spending a lot of time in a place and watching the birds and kind of watching their behavior. That kind of increases your chance of getting something.
Right. Okay. And then Yvonne Nelson, I'm retiring. These guys guides will be our go-to for seeing this amazing province. Great.
Deborah.
How
Ah,
easy is it to organize a trip to the Athabasca Sand Dunes?
it isn't.
No.
It isn't easy. It takes some doing. You have to fly in or boat in from one of the communities on Lake Athabasca, and
Or paddle in.
and the only road access to Lake Athabasca from the south is Stony Rapids, and that's a pretty long, rough haul. You can you can canoe in, but it's a national park, but there are provincial park, sorry, but there's no roads, no buildings, no people, no self-service, no infrastructure of any kind. So when you do go, you have to be completely self-sufficient for wilderness camping. Now, occasionally, there might be some organizations running trips. Not that often, but
some canoe outfitters might be offering something.
Yeah, I know Churchill Canoe Outfitters has offered trips there, so they're somebody to check with. But no, it's not easy. You have to be quite motivated to go up there.
You have to be proficient in wilderness camping too. So the logistics of arranging the trip is something that's probably difficult to work out. But once you're there and you're all alone, it's a fantastic place, and you're just there to explore and see what you can find, and take all your garbage out with you, of course, as just good practice.
And you will be alone, probably.
Yeah.
On the last trip that we did, when we canoed along the South Shore, in a week or a little more that we were out, we never saw another person. We never saw another boat. Other than the odd plane flying overhead, it was like the rest of the world just didn't exist. Right. And there's very few places in the world that you can do that.
Right. Oh, no, for sure. So if someone did want to plan a trip to the Athabasca Sand Dunes, would you suggest that their first click on the website or their first call would be to Tourism Saskatchewan, or where would you suggest?
That might be the best, because they would probably be more up to date on things that are being offered. And the other thing that some people do is we've canoed up there, but people have also gone and just hiked. So you get dropped by a float plane and spend a week or however you want just hiking around, and then get picked up again. So that's certainly another option, and that would certainly be the cheapest option as well.
Right. Oh, okay, great. And I believe Rianne has another question. Do your books and guides provide information about whether these are easier or more challenging to see? For some, it looks like the level of gear and fitness may be required. We'd like to begin at a novice level.
First, we'll just address that for the Great Saskatchewan Bucket List book. We have rated things from difficulty from 1 to 5. And there are a lot of places in the province that are very easy on the 1 level. So you drive right up to them, walk right up to them. Conglomerate Cliffs are a good example of that, or seeing the Badlands in the south. Others, as you get farther north, they do become more difficult. You have to be proficient at being on the water and comfortable with that. And wilderness camping, we rate some of those as 3s, 4s, and 2 of them we've rated as 5. I forget what the other one is, Waffleman Gorge, and there's one other.
There's the Porcupine River and the IK.
Oh, yeah.
But I think on that book, I think well over half are easy, like meaning anybody with average abilities can get to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And of course, the driving book, that's pretty well anybody. If you can drive or ride in a car, you can go to all of those places.
Right.
But we have to add some hiking trails along the way, and work some hiking things into the driving tour book. So if you do have some time, you can hike along the sand dunes along the east shore of Good Spirit Provincial Park, for example, or in Duck Mountain. There's some nice little hiking trails along the ski trail route at the south. So, we try to incorporate other ways where you can enjoy nature and see it firsthand.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Because Rianne was going to ask if you could recommend some novice trips.
Well, any of the driving trips, I think, would be novice. But if you want to go a little farther afield into the north, along the Churchill River, there's a few canoeing trips that are very close to the road that you can do, say, on a weekend trip, something like that. The one to Robertson Falls is probably the best one because it's all just lake paddling. You canoe from Missinippi to the south end of the lake, and there's a wonderful wilderness campground overlooking the falls. In fact, when we showed you Robertson Falls, all of those photos were taken right from our campsite. So that's a fairly easy one.
The Picayune would be another one.
Yeah, hiking trip into the Picayune.
Very short trails.
The Grails Cabin. That's another one. It's you can either do it as a hiking trip along the shore of Kingsmere Lake, or we prefer the canoeing route, but you can do either, and it's not difficult. Although if you're canoeing, sometimes people who are used to Kingsmere Lake, sometimes that lake can get some pretty good waves on it too.
Not known as a quiet lake. No.
Kathy is wondering if there's anywhere you have not been in Saskatchewan. Is there anything on your bucket list you still have not done?
Oh, yeah, lots. I mean, there's a lot of the rivers in the north and lakes in the north that we haven't been to. Been to quite a few, but what happens is you go on some of these trips and then you hear about other great places that other people have been to, which we haven't. So I don't think we're going to run out.
No. And Kathy had a follow-up question of how many trips do you take each year?
Well, it depends on the year. This last couple of years, like everybody else, not as many. There are some years where we get out and head up north, almost every chance we get. Although one of the benefits, I wouldn't say a benefit, but one of the things about the last couple of years with people not wanting to travel far or getting together with groups of people and so on is most of the stuff that we've covered in our books are things you can do on your own. And because they're outdoors, it's, if you're concerned about things like social distancing and so on, getting out into nature is probably about the best bet.
And we've found that a lot of people are embracing that too. They're looking for more places to explore in Saskatchewan, and they're filling up the campgrounds. So everybody's camping now, and it's sort of hard to gauge your time if you want to go down to. For us, it's a big trip to go down to Grasslands National Park, but we phone down there. No, there's no room. No, there's no room. Or it's first come, first served. But there sure looks like a lot of people coming, and there's events, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful that people are exploring Saskatchewan. So we're happy that people are getting out there and finding things to do and discovering things of their own. And that's the other thing, is that we're not saying that these are the only places to go. This is kind of like it's what we've done, but it's a springboard for you to find your own places. And, there are all sorts of neat places to stay in grain bins and, bed and breakfasts along the way, and just get out there and find your own niche somewhere along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, definitely. There's a lot of small campgrounds tucked around and everything. Diane, we've used your driving books and bucket list as our guides for seeing different parts of Saskatchewan over the years and have found them to be very helpful. So that's great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brenda.
And please, anyone type in any comments or questions. I was really interested in your shot of the moose in Grasslands. I have been down to Grasslands many, many years, many times. I've never seen a moose, so that was a treat for me because I've seen moose before, luckily not with my car hitting them or anything, but I'd never seen one in Grasslands. So that was so interesting to see.
Yeah, they're moving south all the time, and I mean, you just drive down the highway, and even in the south now you're seeing beware of the moose signs, which several years ago you wouldn't see. And I think what often, like we've seen the moose like last summer in Thickwood Hills, we've seen them in the south, and we end up seeing them in the south more than we do in the north now.
Huh. It's so interesting.
Well,
Yeah,
also, I guess in the prairies, they're in the open, so it's easier for it to spot them as well.
Yeah, no, that's neat. And certainly I think that almost leads to one of my question is you've been doing this for many years. Have you seen a lot of changes in the habitat? I mean, you just talked about sort of the movement of the moose, but in your many years, have you seen a lot of changes? Have you, in the sense of number of people visiting, but also the change to the scenery? Have we lost some areas that you used to go and visit, but are no longer able?
Oh,
Not
yeah.
to put you on the spot, but yeah.
And it's there's forests disappearing all the time. I think a big tragedy is the loss of so many wetlands. That we're noticing that as well.
And clearing on farmland.
Yeah, clearing, and especially like in the Aspen Parkland, the terrain is changing quite a bit, and sometimes not for the better.
Right. Yeah. No. So definitely we need to take advantage of going now and visiting these places and seeing the beauty now. So are there any other questions and comments from people? Please just type them in. No? Okay. Well, I want to thank Robin and Arlene tonight for their presentation. I've seen some of your photos before in your books, but just the slideshow was just, it was just incredible. Oh, we do have one more. I like the area around Leader, Estuary, Bulls, Forehead, Butte from Yvonne.
And we do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Robin and Arlene. It's wonderful. I encourage people to go and buy copies of your book, to keep them in their car and to hop in this summer. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think that's pretty much it. So thank you again for asking us. It's been fun.
Yeah, and the technical aspects and everything, we appreciate all that's gone on behind the scenes as well. So it's been a lovely evening. We've enjoyed it immensely. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Robin and Arlene, and really appreciate your time. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge our sponsors of the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon. And tonight in particular, this is made possible by the Saskatchewan Writers Guild, a wonderful organization, and they are sponsored by Saskatchewan Lotteries and Sask Culture. I would also like to recognize the Government of Canada through the Department of Canadian Heritage, the City of Saskatoon, and Sask Lotteries, as well as Business for the Arts. And there's many, many other sponsors, as you can see on our list. And most of all, I'd also be very, very remiss if I didn't recognize No YXE. for their technical support and broadcasting support. They are definitely the ones that made this pop and made this work tonight. So thank you very much, Ian and Deborah and all of those involved with No XYE. So thank you very much. So this is part of the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon, and it's more than a week-long festival. And so tonight was this presentation, but tomorrow night, Thursday, is the Heritage Variety Night at the Roxy Theatre, historic theatre in Saskatoon. Free admission starts at 7:30. It'll be hosted by Jeff O'Brien, and there's cultural singers, First Nations performer, there's film, there's a lot going on. So please head down to the Roxy tomorrow night at 7:30. On Friday is a rerun of our video from last year's festival, so a lot more entertainment and some of our exhibitors. On Saturday, our speaker series continues at 1 o'clock with presentation by Lisa Bird Wilson on Probably Ruby. 2 p.m., there's a panel discussion on the history and contribution of the African culture in Canada, and that's a bilingual presentation. And as well, from 1 to 4 at the Museum of Antiquities, there's Crafternoon at the U of S. And then it wraps up on Sunday at the Western Development Museum, which will be offering free admission. Yes, free admission. And with special activities, and there will be entertainment by the Whiskey Jerks. So for information and any more details on all of our events of the Heritage Festival of Saskatoon, please just go to our website. So it's Heritage Festival of Saskatoon, all one word, .com, and that'll give you all the details and such. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. It was a wonderful presentation. We encourage you to buy Robin and Arlene's books and to go out this summer and discover Saskatchewan for yourself. So thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of the evening. Bye.